Amazing. Quite the conversation starter, it would seem. I wonder whether for you, that act of kindness, maybe it was a form of, I don't know, generosity. Maybe someone gave you an amazing gift. Perhaps it was hospitality. Maybe you went around someone's house, I don't know, and you were just shown amazing hospitality. Or a restaurant you went to and the service was amazing and they were just so kind. Or maybe, I think most often the bit of kindness I receive the most is from a close friend where they just give me their ear. They just listen. Kindness can be shown, can't it, in like so many different ways. And it has such power. It has such power to build relationships. It also has power to start relationships, doesn't it? And so today I want to look at kindness together. What does it mean to be a community that is kind? In our family, a recent act of kindness we saw. We've been suffering from chickenpox in the family, which is, I know, devastating. Our first has had it, and he's safe. So he is no longer contaminating anyone. He is here. But the other two, they've just got the first symptoms. But I remembered like a week or so ago, Levi, our oldest, who's 5, we didn't know he had it yet. So you have it for like a week without any like surface level stuff going on. And he got back from school. I know, probably should have been isolating, but hey. We didn't know at the time. And he was sat on the doorstep. We were about to go to swimming. He has swim lessons after school. And we were sat there, and he was on the doorstep just like in his feelings, really feeling it. And then his little sister, who's 3, and this is a rare thing for us because I feel like that age, they're not very aware of other people, but they're slowly starting to pick it up. And we're seeing this like friendship form. And Hallie, who's 3, sits next to him, and she just strokes his back. And that was it. Didn't say anything. Just showed him a little act of kindness. And it's nice to see how their relationship is blossoming. And so today we're going to be jumping into Ruth. And we are up to Ruth 2. So if you have your Bibles, feel free to turn to Ruth 2. We're going to read that chapter. It's quite short, but the words will come up on screen. And I'll read them to you. But I just want to pick up from where we left off. So last week, Lewis spoke about what it means to be a community that is committed. And he read from Ruth 1. And Ruth 1, we met our cast of characters. So to set the scene, Ruth is before the time of kings, but during the time of judges. So what that means, the world was created in Genesis. We read about creation. We then meet this guy called Abraham, and he's made all these promises. And then through his family line, we meet a guy called Jacob. Before Jacob, sorry. We go through his family line. We meet a guy called Moses. And Israel are God's people, and they are taken captive by Egypt. You may have heard of Pharaoh and this story of the parting of the Red Sea. Anyway, they part through the Red Sea, and now they are on their way to the Promised Land under Moses' follower, who is Joshua, who kind of leads them into this Promised Land. And they're working out what it means to be a community. What does it mean to be a community built on the foundation that their God is God? What does that mean? What does that look like? And so we're in the time of Judges, before any kings have come about. And this is where we meet our characters, Ruth and her mother-in-law, Naomi. So Naomi, she is married to this man called Abimelech, and they move to Moab, which is modern-day Jordan. So they have left the safety of Israel to go and live a life over here. And they have 2 sons. And these 2 sons marry Moabite women. And what happens is this tragic tale we read in Ruth 1, where all 3 men pass away. And it leaves Naomi as the matriarchal leader of this family with no men in the family, and then her 2 daughters-in-law, who are from Moab, where they currently live. And so what we see in that chapter, Ruth suddenly discovers that what's happening over in Israel is that there's this amazing harvest. God has come to the aid of Israel, and there's this amazing harvest. And so Naomi makes a decision, we've got to go back. But she doesn't want her daughters-in-law to feel like they need to stay with her. So she says, why don't you stay with your people in Moab? And one of her daughters-in-law, she takes the hint and she leaves. But Ruth has a different reaction, and she clings to Naomi. And she says, where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and my God will be your God. She makes this declaration of commitment. And she comes under this God that wasn't once hers. And so, anyway, we pick up the scene in Ruth 2. And what's happened is Naomi and Ruth, they have moved back to Israel, to Bethlehem, a famous city you may be aware of. And we pick it up. And I'm going to read from Ruth 2, where these characters have just come into frame. So here we go. It says this. Now, Naomi had a relative on her husband's side, a man of standing from the clan of Elimelech, that's Naomi's husband, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, "Let me go to the fields and pick up leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor." Naomi said to her, "Go ahead, my daughter." She went out, entered a field, and began to glean behind the harvesters. As it turned out, by the way, this is a hint when you read in Ruth's gospel that God is doing something. These phrases, as it turned out and as it happened. God is really funny, this book. It's only 4 chapters long. You can read it in one sitting. But God never speaks. But there are little clues as to what God is doing. So we see this. As it turned out, she was working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you," they answered. Boaz asked the overseers of his harvesters, "Who does that young woman belong to?" The overseer replied, "She is the Moabite who came back from Moab with Naomi." She said, "Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves behind the harvesters." She came into the field and has remained here from morning till now, except for a short rest in the shelter. Just a bit of context here. If you are a studier of Leviticus, you'll know where I'm going with this. I don't worry, I forgive you if you aren't. But there was a law in the time of Israel where foreigners or people who were poor or oppressed, or they could follow behind the harvesters and pick up the gleanings on the edge of the harvest, like the scraps. They were to be left out. It was almost like a way of donating back. It was Israel's way of being generous. So this woman Ruth is gleaning in the fields. So Boaz said to his daughter, "Listen to me." So Boaz said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with the women who work for me. Watch the field where the men are harvesting and follow along after the women. I have told the men not to lay a hand on you, and whenever you are thirsty, go and get a drink from the water jars the men have filled." At this, she bowed down with her face to the ground. She asked him, "Why have I found such favor in your eyes that you notice me, a foreigner?" Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. May I continue to find favor in your eyes, my Lord," she said. "You have put me at ease by speaking kindly to your servant, though I do not have the standing of one of your servants." At mealtime, Boaz said to her, "Come over here, have some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar." And when she sat down with the other harvesters, he offered her roasted grain. She ate all she wanted and had some left over. And she got up to glean. Boaz then gave orders to the men, "Let her gather among the sheaves." By the way, this is like a prominent position in the harvest kind of ritual. The sheaves is where the good stuff is. It's where they're just starting the harvest process. He's like, "No, don't be behind. Come up front where the good stuff is." It's an invitation to a prominent position. So I've just lost where I was. So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. As she got up to glean, Boaz gave the orders to the men. "Let her gather among the sheaves and don't reprimand her. Even pull out some stalks for her from the bundles and leave them for her to pick up, and don't rebuke her." So Ruth gleaned in the field until evening. Then she threshed the barley she had gathered, and it amounted to about an ephah, which is about 13 kilograms. It's a big, heavy load. She carried it back to the town, and her mother-in-law saw how much she had gathered. Ruth also brought out and gave her what she had left over, and she had eaten enough. Her mother-in-law asked her, "Where did you glean today? Where did you work? Blessed be the man who took notice on you." Then Ruth told her mother-in-law about the one whose place she had been working. "The name of the man I worked with today is Boaz," she said. "The Lord bless the dead," she added. "That man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers." Then Ruth and the Moabite said, "He even said to me, 'Stay with my workers until they finish harvesting all my grain.'" Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, "It will be good for you, my daughter, to go with the women who work for him, because in someone else's field you might be harmed." So Ruth stayed close to the women of Boaz to glean until the barley and wheat harvest season had finished, and she lived with her mother-in-law. There's a lot of arable stuff going on in this passage. It's very farmer heavy. I wonder in the room, does anyone have any farming experience? No, I didn't expect so. I grew up in the countryside, and I had a little bit of farming experience. So every February, March time, it's what they call lambing season. And so the lambs would be born, and what shepherds need to do at that time is they need to keep watch of the flock. They need to see when the mothers are going to give birth, and it's always at the most inconvenient hour. And so I was part of a church in the countryside, and so around this time, a lot of the farmers who came in, they would be looking for willing hands who would happily do the evening hours, looking out for the lambs. And so a few of my half terms were spent doing that. But that's as far as my farming experience goes. I had a couple kind of like springs looking after some lambs. But I would like to say my farming knowledge has grown quite considerably since. Now, I don't know if anyone has watched Clarkson's Farm. Has anyone watched Clarkson's Farm? It's a great, I don't know what you think about Jeremy Clarkson, but it is a great show. And I feel like I've learned so much about farming that I didn't know before. Like, how, like, it's so hard to earn a living farming. Like, I feel like real, like, connection through that show with farmers. There's so much that is up in the air when it comes to what you might earn that year. It could be the health of the livestock that you have. It can even be down to the weather. If it's not a good season of weather, you're not going to have good crops. You're not going to make any money. And so in this passage, we heard, didn't we, in Ruth 1, that it was a good season of crop. That's why Ruth and Naomi, they'd come to Israel. They're like, it's been a good season. God has blessed us richly. And so they go after this harvest. But it's interesting. I think Boaz could maybe have responded to seeing this woman Ruth in his field, gleaning, taking the stuff at the sides that the harvesters hadn't got to yet. He could have responded in a few ways. Now, as a farmer, he probably has had quite a few seasons of drought and famine maybe, where there hasn't been enough food. And so this is chance to make a lot of money. For Boaz, this is like ka-ching, ka-ching. Like there's a big harvest to be reaped here. So take stock, take it all. You never know when the next drought's going to come, when the next famine's going to come. He could have acted very ungenerous. He could have sent Ruth away. Another reaction would be, well, I could just follow, the law and let her get on, but just leave her there. Or the way we see Boaz actually react is he could have noticed her. He could have shown her even greater generosity beyond his obligation of the law. He could have gone far beyond to show her grace and kindness and bring her in. And that's what we see, don't we, in this passage? Boaz goes the extra mile. He's committed to be kind. And that's what I want to pull out from this passage. We see in verse 8 this. So Boaz said to Ruth, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here. His kindness is his responsibility. He knows that what he's been given is from God, and his responsibility to be kind with what God has given him. And there's three things I want to pull out about Boaz's commitment here to kindness. What does kindness look like? Here are the nuts and bolts. I think kindness, it notices first. It protects and it reaches. What I mean by notices is that kindness, it chooses to see what others might not always see. It chooses to look for the one on the edge. It chooses to show kindness where you don't need to show kindness. It goes the extra mile. It notices. Boaz sees Ruth, doesn't he, when others may have overlooked her. And if we're compassionate people, it begins with paying attention to see others. Kindness, it also protects. We see in the passage, don't we, that Boaz, he sends out commandments to the men not to harm her, that she wouldn't be sent away. And he looks after her dignity. To be a widow at this time was to be very vulnerable. It's a patriarchal society, and a lot of the inheritance, it would pass down the men's side. And so this is a family with no men. They are vulnerable. They are all widowed. They have no source of income. Women weren't as well educated as men at that time. And so the ability to get a job where you could earn money and keep for yourself, there was this theme of dependency. But what I love what Boaz does is his kindness isn't just to fix the problem. He lifts her up. She works the field. She's empowered. It's like, here's the opportunity. He offers it to her. It's dignifying. It's not, oh, there's the problem, I'll solve it. I feel a duty to solve it. No, he lifts her up. And I find when it comes to lifting people out of poverty, I worked for a charity called Tear Fund for a long time. The best way to do it is not handouts, it's hand-ups. It's helping people get back into a position where they can find their own needs. They can be sustainable in their own way. They don't have to rely on a system that just continues to fill that need. Boaz, he gives Ruth dignity. It protects. Also, this kindness goes beyond obligation. We spoke about it a little bit earlier. There was this gleaning law where you had to leave out a certain amount of your crop for those who were most vulnerable in Israel society. But he goes beyond, doesn't he? He shows her kindness beyond means. He exceeds the law that's required, and he shows grace, and it's his duty. I love that. Healthy communities, I think, they don't say, how can I bless you? Rather, they say, they ask, how can I bless you? Rather than, what must I do? How can I bless you? Recently, you may have seen in some of our local news, it was in Portsmouth News, but it was also in the Church Times. Our church, we run this thing called Safe Harbour on a Monday, and it's a community meal for anyone in the city who needs food. It doesn't stigmatize. It's an open table for whoever wants to come, whoever needs a safe place to have a safe meal once a week on a Monday. And recently, it's been pretty hard, we've found, to get funding for this. We used to rely on some council funding and some grants. We did a lot of work, but a lot of charities are struggling at the moment to raise funds. And so we could have stopped there. We could have stopped at that level of commitment, but we felt the need to go beyond our obligation, beyond what we could get. And so a group of trepid explorers who were green sailors, except from Alex, who led the boat. They'd never sailed before. They decided, you know what, we're not going to give up, and we're going to raise money for this. And so they set out to sea to sail around the whole of the Isle of Wight. This was last Friday. They got back. It was a 20-hour grueling journey. Braden's here. Braden, you were one of them, and Mike as well, who was on guitar. There's a few faces. And they went on this 20-hour grueling journey, maybe even more than 20 hours. More than 20 hours? 18. We'll round it up, 20. This is the prep before and after. Yeah, 18 hours around the Isle of Wight. And they came back, and they'd fundraised £6,000, which is amazing, which will get us all the way till after Christmas to fund the meals of that community in that place. But what moved me so much is that it was beyond obligation. It was like, we won't give up. That's what kindness does. It goes beyond. It reaches far beyond. We want to show a kindness, don't we, as a community here, that goes beyond. It reaches. It protects. And we also want to show a kindness that is rooted in kindness. This is the next point I wanted to bring out. In Ruth 2, we read this verse, Ruth 2, verse 12. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. This is Boaz saying this to Ruth. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. Boaz notices something about Ruth's story, and the clue is in that last verse. He notices that she has put all her trust. She has been kind beyond measure to her widowed mother-in-law. She's gone beyond the extra mile, and he's moved by her kindness. And he sees that she's come to take refuge, to be faithful to the God that he serves. And he's moved by it. And so what I find interesting is that he doesn't wait for God to bless her. He does the blessing. He doesn't wait for God to show her kindness. He shows her kindness. It's his duty as a follower of that God that that person has trusted in, for him to show and extend the kindness that his God has showed him in the harvest season. He's just returning it, and he's moved by it. And what I find fascinating about the whole book, and I said it earlier of Ruth, God doesn't speak, but we do see God act. And it's often through the hands and the feet of the people that trust and serve him. We see God bless Ruth. And we start to see this story. It starts to turn around. And we'll see next week just how much this story turns around. Just simply because people were faithful and obedient to the God they served. God doesn't speak. Maybe you feel like that in life at the moment. I don't hear God speaking in life. But I can still be kind. I can still be faithful. God is good and I'll be good. Jesus says, doesn't he? This is how they will know you are my disciples, if you love one another. And we love because he first loved us. We have to be rooted in kindness. To show kindness, we have to be rooted in kindness. And I know what you might be thinking. I feel like some of the people I know in life who are the kindest, they're not always Christians. A lot of them are here. But they're not always. Kindness can be extended by anyone. But what is kindness when you are stretched, when you are exhausted, when you have nothing left to give out? Where's your kindness rooted then? Where's your kindness to go the extra mile when you physically have nothing left in your fuel tank? Is your kindness rooted in the God who showed kindness when he was persecuted, when he was betrayed, when he was hung on a cross by the very people that were once singing his name and his praises, and in his very dying breath, hung there, looked at them and said, Father, they do not know what they are doing. Forgive them, Lord. As he hung there in his dying breath, he said, it is finished. He showed kindness beyond measure when no one was willing to give him it in return. That's the God our kindness is rooted in, a God that goes the extra mile. And I was reflecting on this. I was like, where's an example of where a church has been so kind? And you don't have to look far in your Bible. You get to Acts, just after Jesus. It's a story of the early church. And in Acts 2 and 4, at the end of the passage, you see that this community, they were outrageously kind. They sold their possessions to give to the poor, to give to those who were in need. They showed kindness, like radically. And it wasn't like this strategy. It's like, you know how we're going to do church growth, guys? We're going to do 5 acts of kindness this week. Loads of people are going to come through the doors. It's just who they were. Why were they like that, I wonder? I think it's because they spent time with Jesus. That church in Acts is so immediate to Jesus. They learned what it was to be in the Father's arms from Jesus. Jesus was daily in his Father's arms. He was daily in the kindness of God, and he acted out of that place. And so what they're doing in Acts, it's not this like church strategy plan to grow church by being kind. It's their family DNA. It's from spending time with their Father in heaven who is good and who is kind. Are we rooted in kindness? Are we committed to kindness? Finally, and I'll finish with this, kindness, are you transformed by kindness? Are you seeing people around you transformed by kindness? We see in this story in verse 20, Ruth says, it says this, the Lord bless him, Naomi said to her daughter-in-law. He has not stopped showing his kindness to the living and the dead. And she added, this man is our close relative. He is one of our guardian redeemers. Now, what guardian redeemer meant at that time was that there was kind of like a practice in that time where if someone was widowed, someone from your family would marry that person in order to return their story around, to buy lost property, to pay off debts. There was almost like a community gathering around that person in their vulnerability to re-transform their story, to turn things around. And so Ruth is hinting at something heavily here Naomi is hinting heavily here at Ruth. She's like, he's our guardian redeemer. He's going to be the one to turn this story around. Last week, we learned that Ruth, she changed her name, didn't she, to Mara. Ruth means like delightful, and Mara meant bitterness. Her story had control of her life. But in this moment, she realizes, and the author starts to use her name again as Naomi. See it turning around, don't we? There's a transformation. And what's amazing, some people call this the gospel of Ruth, because it echoes so much of the story of the gospel. We see how God uses this brokenness to completely transform the world around it. And what I mean by that is if you follow Ruth's family line, and this is a spoiler for next week, Ruth marries Boaz, spoiler alert. They have a child called Obed. That son has a child called Jesse, and that son has a child called David. David will become the king of Israel. And if you follow David's family line, you know where you get to. It gets to Jesus. It's funny how just this one interaction in a field sets up the course of history. Jesus is a result of this family line. You can track Ruth in his family line. Just from this act of faithful obedience. If we are faithful and obedient, even when it's hard. For Ruth, it was hard. She was the most vulnerable person in this story. Yet she chooses to be obedient and faithful. And she follows Naomi. And Boaz, with the field he had, he was faithful and kind and obedient. And from that, we have this story where the rest of history is transformed because of Jesus. It's amazing, isn't it? I wonder, what is your field? What's the field you've been given? Like Boaz. What's the area of kindness? You might feel like you're in a harvest season that is full of life and you've got so much gleanings to share. Or maybe you feel more like Ruth in the story, where you don't have anything, if anything. But it's amazing in this story, you have two different opposites. One person with so much, one person with so little. But because of their faithful obedience, we see God start to transform the story and turn it around. Can you be obedient with the field you've been given? And I want to finish with this as a story that has happened this week. And I wanted to share a story of how God is moving today. I think it's really easy when we preach to tell stories of the past. 2 years ago, God did this amazing thing. But God is doing amazing things here in Portsmouth this very day, this very week. And this week alone, we were praying as a church staff team of what is our field. We were looking at these passages before we speak on them on Mondays. And we felt really called that our field was our doorstep. And it was a really practical word that someone had, like it was the actual doorstep of the church. And we have another church called All Saints, and it's opposite this charity that look to rehome and rehouse young people and help them at a time of need when they come out of the care system and have nowhere to go. And it rehouses and looks after young people. And our doorstep for All Saints Church is physically become a meeting point for these young people. And we literally have to step over them sometimes to get into the building. It's quite funny. But we were praying, and we felt like this is a word for us. And so over the last few weeks, we've been having conversations with these young people who are on our doorstep every morning. We've been getting them teas and coffees. We've been getting them whatever, like being generous and kind, but also we've been inviting them to church. And this week on Wednesday, a couple of them came to our youth group here. And they had an amazing time. Our youth runs at the same time as Alpha here on a Wednesday. And there were some incredible conversations that they were coming with. And then later on, they decided, oh, you know what, we'll come back. And they came on Friday, and you see the photos on screen now. We had this thing called High Tide, where all the churches in the area bring their young people together. And we invited these two guys from All Saints, these two young people, along. And I got this back. I want to read this message. This is from Danielle, our youth pastor. And we were praying as a team on our staff WhatsApp, like nothing you've ever seen. We were just hoping that God would do something amazing. And she sends this message. This is like at 11 o'clock on Friday night. High Tide was amazing. The worship was fire. That's young person talk for it was really good. The worship was fire. Our two All Saints youth came, and she quotes them. This is one of them. I thought I was an atheist, but tonight showed me your God is real. This is another one. I haven't been to church since my granddad died, and now Jesus is calling me back. And then Danielle prayed the words of Jeremiah over them. Jeremiah 29:11, you may know it well, where it talks about the plans that God has for you to prosper you and not to harm you. In your time of need, maybe you feel like Ruth, or in your time of plenty, maybe you feel like Boaz. God can do amazing things if you're just faithful and obedient to him.